All right, all right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm not sure where in the world that you are at. If you are in the United States, I'm probably expecting most of you to be on the East Coast somewhere because 65% of the US population is on the Eastern time zone. I don't know if you knew that, Gail, but yeah, so 15% in the Central time zone and 5% in the time zone I'm in, which is Denver, Colorado, and nobody lives in Wyoming or Montana or New Mexico. And so we're really low. And then the West Coast is about another 15%. So if you think about the eastern half of the United States from the Central time zone to the East Coast, you're probably about 85% of the entire U.S. population is all on that side of the country. And so welcome today if you're able to be here or you're watching this as recording or you're watching it from anywhere in the world. So I don't know if it's nighttime, daytime, anytime, but I'm just honored that you would be here with us today, that you would spend your time, because you could be on anybody else's podcast and you are here with us today. And so we try to bring on some amazing guests. We try to make sure that folks that we bring on can help impact your life in some way, can either teach you or give you insight. You know, there's so much incredible information that is in our world. And it's trying nowadays to try to synthesize it. I can remember when I was a kid, I'm 61 years old now. And I can remember when I was a kid, not even when I was a kid, maybe when I was a young adult, there was a show called Jeopardy on. And Jeopardy was this show that we honored all these people who had these incredible memories and could regurgitate facts and information. And the show may still be on, I don't know. They used to have like these college champions, and anybody who'd come on and just regurgitate information or knew what is, and they would answer with a question. And it was a great show if you were smart, and it was a really hard show to watch if you weren't very smart. And now, if you have an iPhone or, a little small computer in your hand, you could probably go on the show and answer every question pretty quickly, which is kind of scary. So I guess what I'm saying is the way that we deal with information has changed. And now it's more like we got all this information. How do we synthesize it? How do we get it? But what hasn't been lost is this desire for knowledge and then turning that knowledge into wisdom. And one of the best ways that you get knowledge is through books, through, being able to take somebody's thoughts that they put together over a length of time and then made it so that you could read it. I can remember I was a special ed kid, so I couldn't read by third grade, or they told me I was. And so trying to learn how to read was a big deal for me. I can remember getting kicked out of classes and English classes in high school and, not being able to learn the language. But then this technology thing came in and became the great equalizer. And so I can't wait to, you can see that Gail says she's a Golden Ghostwriter. So that pretty tells us just from her title that she's got a handle on reading and writing and that she understands how to do it and what the place is in our world, in our society for that now with all the AI, which gives us even more to read and more to think about and all the different writing and stuff that goes on. And how do we know what's real and not real? And do we need to know what's real and not real? And we'll explore some of those conversations. But I first asked her to at least tell us like how she got to where she's at now, like her story, where, like maybe the parts of the country she grew up in and, what has made her this incredible ghostwriter that she is. And so, thank you for being on our show. Thank you for taking your time to be with us today. I can't wait to hear your story. I can't wait to chop it up with you afterwards as we explore what it is that you do. So the floor is yours, and go ahead and tell us who you are.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you. Now, I was thinking you had given me some questions in terms of what does it mean to live boldly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'll start with that because it's where I'm at now,
Mm-hmm.
but something happened, that really was the impetus for me to get to this place. And so I would say that for me, living boldly, how we all have stuff inside of us that we carry around, like wounds or traumas or fears, things that we haven't been able to let go of, and they get in the way for us. And so for me, living boldly means working through that stuff that I have inside so that I could connect with my true self and, bring love to the world and share my gifts. I think we all have gifts, and
Mhm.
I have some as well. And so that's kind of a segue into my story in a sense that I had a trauma when I was 14 years old. I won't go into too much of the details, but my parents had a really terrible divorce. My dad had an affair with my mother's best friend, and like everything blew up.
Mhm.
And I was very close with my dad, and I just didn't want to have any of this. I was 14 when this happened. And because we were so close, I just figured, like, well, I got to get him to change his mind. Plus, he was going with my mother's best friend, who was like my aunt. It was just the kind of like the floor just opened up and
Mhm.
swallowed me. And at one point, I got desperate. I was like, I got to do something fast. I got to get him to change his mind. And so I went to the window. We lived in a big apartment building in the Bronx in New York City. And I went to the window on the 11th floor and I pretended that I was going to jump out.
Oh
I'm
gosh.
going to, but I thought maybe that would get my dad to change his mind, but it didn't. And that moment when I saw that my plan was foiled, it was that moment that I became a catastrophizer. Do you know what that
I
is?
don't know that word. Yeah, maybe tell me what that is and how that
Yeah.
works.
A catastrophizer is somebody that is always afraid the worst is going to happen. They
Okay.
catastrophize,
Mhm.
it's like you think the worst is always going to
Yeah.
happen. And so that moment, I could go back, I mean, it was like 50 years ago. I could go back and remember that moment in time where I realized, because before that, I just had this idyllic life, life was good, easy. My parents never fought. So it was such a
Okay.
shock. But I still took it personally. It was still about me at
Mhm.
that time and my dad leaving me. And I realized that, oh my gosh, like terrible, terrible things could happen in this lifetime, but I'll be damned if I'm ever sideswiped again. I'm going to be ready. And I see how that, although it was a trauma for me, I see how that trauma was really an impetus for my spiritual journey. I'm a very spiritual person. And it took several years until I was really even in my 30s, where it was a conscious decision that I
Mhm.
realized that I'm more than just my traumas, and I'm even more than just my body, that
Okay.
I'm connected to something bigger, something greater. We could call it, everybody has different names, God, spirit, but that which is bigger than us, that I
Okay.
was part of that. And I was going to go and seek to connect to that divinity that I had in myself. And what I've learned is that it's letting go of all those wounds and difficulties that we have inside, which is the impetus for the spiritual journey. And that helps us to claim our deepest self and claim who we really are so we can offer our gifts to the world. How's that for a start?
Oh my gosh, that is so good. I would love to kind of know, like, so you're this catastrophizer at this point, and you're 14 years old, and that's entering high school, and all the different things that go along with that is just got to be insane and crazy. And maybe just kind of share with us a little bit about like your identity shifts in those times, because you're this person now who believes that I have to pretend like I'm going to jump off of a building in order to get attention. And so that
No more.
identity, I would love to hear that is who you thought you were, and then you saying the worst thing's going to happen. How long did that last before your identity was able to change into somebody that now goes, wait a minute, there's so much more to life. There's so much, that incredible that we could do. I mean, kind of just walk me through your stages of identity, because we all go through a whole bunch of different ones, but yours seems to be super interesting.
Oh, well, you know what? It still comes up. It's just that I'm aware of it now. I'm conscious of it. But, it affected me. I would say that I had two relationships. See, because what happened was I decided that because my dad was so loving, and he was telling me, I love you. And I knew that he loved me, but it wasn't enough. In other words, yeah, you love me, but not enough to stay. And so I came to believe that I was tainted, that it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. Something was wrong with me. Yeah. And I would say that I had two relationships with men where it was very clear that they weren't the right ones for me, but I picked them. Well, not only they were, had good qualities, but they couldn't commit to me. And I see, looking back, that I was wanting them to want me. You know what I mean? Like, am I good enough? Am I good enough? That kind of thing. Thank goodness that was only two relationships. And now my husband worships the ground I walk on. But it did have effects in that way. Yeah. I'll say that I could tie it into my spiritual journey and my work in a sense that, so I was, before I started writing books, I was an advertising copywriter.
Okay.
And I started in Madison Avenue, the whole thing. As a matter of fact, I actually won an Andy Award, which is a big award for advertising, when I was still a secretary. It was really amazing. It was for an ad for Avon Ultrawear nail polish. And so that got promoted me to a junior copywriter. But I didn't stay in the ad world, Madison Avenue, for a really long time, because it's just like every stereotype that you hear about it, it's worse. So I switched over. Yeah, I switched over to the corporate side. Okay. And I got a job at McGraw-Hill in their creative services department, writing ad copy. And I was there for about 6 years. And then that's when I discovered my spirituality, where it became like a conscious choice. I think it was always a part of me, but that's when it became a conscious choice. I guess I was like 30, 31 or something. And I started doing yoga and meditation. And so McGraw-Hill was going through some changes at that time. And I got them to lay me off, and I moved into a yoga ashram. And I lived there for 2 years, and I practiced yoga and meditation. And so I made that more, actually the head of the ashram, we called him Gurudev at the time. And he had said the term that I've never heard it before, but he said witness consciousness. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's being able to observe yourself and your identity and observe what's happening around you, and not getting caught up in it, not believing that you are your body. You're having that like objective observation. And he said that term, and it was like that minute, it was like, I want that. I have that. I need that. So I moved into the ashram. I got McGraw-Hill to lay me off. And it was all, looking back, I see it was that impetus of wanting to heal. I was suffering so much. I didn't want to carry this pain, that I had all those years.
So when the divorce happened, did you end up staying with your mom, or did you live with your dad? Did he kind of leave you? Did you feel abandoned? How did that all transpire there?
Yeah. Well, I have two younger brothers. I'm the oldest daughter. And so I actually didn't talk to my dad for about 4 years.
Oh, okay.
My brothers did, like they went with him Tuesday, Thursday evening, and they went for him, for the weekend. But I didn't do that. And my dad, he came after me. Like, he never stopped pursuing me, telling me how much he loves me and everything. And he was in therapy at the time, my dad, working this all out.
Yeah.
And, my mother was devastated
Of course.
because
Yeah.
this hit her. It was like a double betrayal. It was like her husband and her
And
best
her best
friend.
friend. Yeah.
I mean, it was, and I just felt like I'm the daughter. What do I do? But so my dad was in therapy, and he told me this later, but he said to him, the therapist said to him that when I fall in love, I'll come back to my dad.
Oh,
And
really?
that's exactly what happened. I guess when you fall in love, like I was older, and I was able to see, look, nothing's black and white, it's love is complex. And that's exactly what happened. So we work things out between us. I mean, it took many years. I was very angry,
Yeah.
but we worked it out. But that didn't mean the catastrophizing went away. It was like, that was my own bag of stuff that I'm carrying, so that's that took another path. But what I wanted to say was, when I moved out of the ashram,
What is an
that's when
ashram? Because just for those who don't understand, I don't know
oh,
what an ashram is. It just sounds
oh,
like a
I'm so
house or a
sorry.
place.
Yeah, I didn't realize it. Well, this wasn't really an ashram per se, where people go and they live and they do spiritual practices. This was actually Kripalu Yoga Center, and it's in Lenox, Massachusetts, and it's like a retreat center.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I moved in and I did seva, which is a Sanskrit word for service. You get a small stipend and you live
Okay.
and work and get to do yoga, meditation, and be with the teacher and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, cool.
So,
Well, thank you. I was thinking like maybe how the monks do, and they go and they're by themselves. They don't get to talk to anybody. But it sounds like it was just a really cool place to be able to find who you
it's
are.
still, yeah. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have assumed. Yeah, it's like like a retreat center where you go and you take classes and stuff. So we ran the place, that kind of thing, for a small stipend. But when I was there for just about 2 years. And when I moved out, that's when I realized that I had a book in me. Like, prior to that, I was not one of those people. I was always a writer. I mean, that's why I decided to be a copywriter, because I felt like I could earn a living doing, doing writing. And but that's when I realized I have this book in me. And it was really this kind of situation where, how they say you teach what you need to learn. That was exactly what it was. It was a self-help book called Your Heart Knows the Answer: How to Trust Yourself and Make the Choices That Are Right for You. And see, because that was a thing. I always was very connected to my intuition, and the book actually teaches you how to distinguish between the voice of your heart or your intuition and the voices in the head and the blah, 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 that kind of thing. So you could come to live according to your heart's wisdom, which is connected, I believe is connected to God, or that which is greater than us. And so the first part of the book teaches you how to distinguish between the voice of your heart and the voice in your head. And then the second part teaches you how to live according to the voice of your heart. And yeah, I realized that I always, like I said, I was always very well connected. I'm a very creative person. And I think when you're creative, you're connected to creation, to creativity. I feel blessed that God gave me that gift. But so I was really connected to that intuition, but I didn't trust it. I just didn't trust it. And that I know it had to do, I mean, we're all taught not to trust, that's kind of the where it's at. But it was more so for me because of the trauma of my parents' divorce. And so that was really the impetus. I didn't realize it how much then, but yeah, so that was a really great experience. And I was very fortunate. I got a literary agent and a publisher, and that started me on my career as an author. And after I finished that book, there was a lot of personal anecdotes in it. I shared a lot about myself. And so after that book came out, soon after, I listened to that inner voice, and it was telling me, help women tell their stories. You have to be a memoirist and help women tell their stories. So I made that pivot. I made that shift. And that's how I got into to becoming a ghostwriter.
Gotcha. So I'd love to, even as as we begin to talk about the whole world of publishing and writing, and there's so many folks that would love to be a writer, and now we have, and I don't know when you started writing, but now we have all the self-publishing places that are bombarding you, and now you have, and then once that happens, you have all the folks that are trying to glean and gain money from you to tell you how well they're going to market your book. And so you came from a marketing space first, so I'm sure that helped, because you kind of understood marketing way before you had to understand this whole world that we're in. But maybe, because I think there's a lot of folks or women that I work with that are all saying, well, not all of them, but some of them are saying that I would love to write a book someday. Maybe from your perspective of going through that whole process and now helping people, what are the advantages and disadvantages of getting whatever those thoughts that are in you out? And is that healing? Because it sounds like for you, it really was to take all those thoughts and those things that were in you and be able to put them on paper that others can glean from and learn from. So maybe just kind of talk about that, what it means to be a writer, and then the whole process of it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's, there's a couple of things, because there's, I work with women who have a story to share, but don't have the time, inclination, or ability to write it on their own. They're not doing that whole, what is it called? Direct to consumer. A lot of people, like right now, as you said, you can bypass the publishing industry completely. But so I work with, there are a lot of people that may want to share their story, but they may even be writers, but they don't have the time or the inclination. And so, so they wouldn't be writing it per se, but writing or working with me, it's a very cathartic and very healing experience. I mean, some people don't realize it as much when they first get going. I'll tell you, my last client, we just finished up about a month or two ago. I'm not going to say her name, but I have permission to share whatever. And she had said to me, she said, I was really mistaken. When I started out, I just felt like, I wanted to have this great book, and I want to help people, and I wanted to really market it really well. And she said, but you know what? After going through this process with you, the healing was so unbelievable. I didn't even realize it. But now that other stuff, it's just the icing on the cake.
That's so cool. That's so cool that you'd be able to do that.
Because the reason is, and I go very deep with my authors, and because the truth is, the deeper we go inside and reflect about our lives, the more readers will resonate or identify with our story, because we're all much more alike than different, in that our life lessons overlap. That's what connects us. Who doesn't want to learn more about self-love, right? We all here, our life lessons overlap. And so to have your book reach as many people as possible, you have to find that place inside you that connects to other people. You see, because people don't realize this, but when you're writing your memoir, whether you're writing it on your own or you're working with a ghostwriter like me, you're not writing it for yourself. Ultimately, you're writing it for the reader. You're giving them something that they could use. It's not just like a dump on the page. And it does turn out to be a very healing or cathartic process for the author, but that's not the goal in terms of what's on the page. It's a natural outcome.
Yeah, I can imagine that. When I think of a ghostwriter, right, I think of somebody who's writing my story or my memoir, and I almost see you as almost like a therapist, because you would be asking me all these questions about my life then I would be answering it to you. And then you would ask me more questions about my life. And then you're writing it down. And then we come together on this is what your life is. And I can imagine, I can see how it could be so therapeutic, because instead of just laying on a couch and talking, I'm just going from what the movie show, laying on the couch and talking to a therapist. I'm literally sharing all my innermost thoughts with you so we can get them on paper. So then I can have legacy, where I can have my life go on forever and ever and ever. And I think that's, so cool that you have that ability and that sense to be able to do it, because not everybody can take on other people's trauma, other people's emotions, other people's, and then be able to live with it and then make it into something that is workable, that is now something that the world should probably read or see. That's got to be a skill that not everybody has. I mean, did you have, I guess the yoga helped, but what other things that do you think are just part of what God gave you, or how are you able to do that?
How I want to respond to that is to show how this trauma did lead me to exactly this space right now, because, I've just done a lot of my own inner work. I've spent my whole life. I mean, that was the first thing I said, right? When I introduced myself, it's about working through our issues so we could shine our lightest, our brightest light. And because I've done such an intense job of that in myself, it helps me to help other people to do it. It's a beautiful opportunity and gift to be able to help people like that. And the other thing I want to say is that women that I work with, it's about leaving a legacy, but it's also about claiming your story, like claiming it 100%. It's in a way, it could be very different than going to a therapist, because you're in a different place. In other words, you're writing your book because you want to claim your life and you want to claim your story and you want to share it with the world. So not that it's not scary, but you're taking a step to claim who you are. It's very powerful.
I got to ask this question because I think about it often as I see people who believe that they have so much to share and so much to give. And then yet when you start having conversations with them, you go, I don't know if that story is what you would like a whole bunch of readers to hear. So does everybody have a story that others would want to read? Or is there some people that just, believe they have a story? And you have to have that conversation with people, not to make up your story, but just, tell me that your story is, I grew up and I got married and I had kids and, then now I'm 70. I just want to find out how that works. Or is there some inner something that somebody really has to share, and does it branch off into other things other than just a memoir?
Well, I only work on women's memoir. That's all I do. But in terms of writing, writing is a way of self-expression. So even if you write a business book, to promote your business, it's still, you're claiming, an aspect of your life, a skill, an expertise, a gift. So what else? What did you ask me again?
So I was just asking about the folks that, they come to you with the memoir, and then I guess, do you always say, I'll just write whatever you want me to write? Or you just, as you're digging in, do you ever find somebody like their story is just not something that, or it could be for kids or grandkids or whatever, I guess, right?
Most people that I work with, and I've done 2 memoirs that I've ghostwritten for people, and both of those people, they had definite reasons why they wanted to write their memoir. They were determined and committed and clear that they had a specific story that they wanted to share. So we delved into that story. Of course, you never know, because both projects, the book, the story ended up being completely or almost completely different than what they really started out. You see, you never know. It's such a a deep inquiry, as to what's going to be revealed. And I use this framework that I tell authors, that I let the story lead. The story tells us where it needs to go. They'll start talking and I'm listening, I'm really listening. Like, what's your deepest truth here that other people might be able to learn from? What's something what about this experience that you just described have other people possibly experience, but in their own way? The circumstances might be completely different, but we all struggle. As I said before, we all have similar needs to, claim our humanity and our divinity. So it's not just putting words on the page, it's getting to the essence of the choices that you made. And again, what other people might be able to glean, what they might be able to learn from you sharing your story.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to get me wrong, because I think everybody should write a book. I think everybody should do a podcast. I think everybody has greatness within them that they should share. But sometimes it's just finding what it is that they should write about. I think somebody who's 25 years old probably shouldn't write a memoir yet, because they haven't had enough life to talk about all the things that are going to happen. But at the same time, they might have something that is incredible to share about an experience that happened to them when they were 14 or something like that. And that might be something that now, when you wrote your first book, you said, I felt like I had a book within me. What was the process that you went through? Did you have like other folks that were helping you at the beginning and they were telling you and encouraging you and you say, oh, you should write that story? Or was it like, I just got to get something out and I don't know where to start and I'm just going to start? Maybe walk folks through who are wanting, maybe they think they have something that they want to share with the world, but they're just not sure how to get started.
Well, I could say what happened with me was that I just read book after book. It's because, I was an ad copywriter. So I wrote ads and brochures and even annual reports, longer documents. Mm-hmm. But in no way, shape, or form is that like a book. I mean, a book is a completely different animal. Mm-hmm. So I was really at the beginning of exploring my life and my spiritual journey. So I was reading one book after another, all these self-help spiritual books. And I remember taking the book and just studying the structure. What is the structure of this book, of this manuscript? And I just taught myself, and then I did that for my book.
Gotcha. So you finished writing it. Did you already have a publisher or somebody who was willing to help you get it published before you finished writing it? Or you wrote it, now I have it, and now I got to go find somebody? How did that process?
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate, but I believe that we're divinely guided. But at that point, I was consulting for a small ad agency where I lived. And it turned out that the owner of that ad agency knew this literary agent. Mm-hmm. And he said, reach out to her. And I reached out to her, and she loved it. She loved what I did. And she actually, Barbara Deal, God bless her, she passed on several years ago, but she actually introduced me to my first a spiritual guide. After I left the ashram, the place had fallen apart when I was there. Right when I was there, it came out that the guru was screwing around with, the women resident, typical stuff. So I left right in the middle when that all happened. And I just said to myself, the next time I have a spiritual teacher, I want it to be one-on-one for a while. I don't want to deal with this whole falling apart of the whole community and everything. And she had my literary agent, she had a spiritual teacher that she introduced me to. So not only did she get me and she found me a publisher for the book. It was wonderful. And she also introduced me to a spiritual guide that I worked with for many years. before I switched to the teacher that I have currently.
Gotcha. Well, I guess this is just so interesting. And so um, you move through, you're writing books. Or have you written more than how many books have you written at this point? That are, you did the two that you did that are the ghostwriting ones.
Yeah.
For the people.
And then this other book. Between the two memoirs that I wrote, I went back and I got my ghostwriting certification training because you had mentioned, and it's so true. Publishing has just been turning inside out between, self-publishing and, people doing their own thing. And so I actually had a step after I wrote that memoir, the first memoir, which actually, I'll say that I was an IPNE Book Award finalist for the first memoir. That's the Independent Publishers of New England. And the title of the book is Finding Zoe. The author was a former Miss Deaf America. Okay. And so after I wrote that book, everything was like, I was like, I got, book award final. I was like, all right, let's go. And then I actually had to step away from my business for a while because my son was going through some serious challenges at the time. And my husband had a corporate job, so like I just had to step back. And so that's what I did. It was a difficult time. And then when I came back, there were so many changes in the publishing industry that I needed to do that for my career. I felt like I needed to just really hone in on my publishing expertise. So that was like almost a 2-year deal. It was a master's level training. So that was, and then after I completed that in 2022, I relaunched my business, Golden Ghostwriting. And then I, and then I worked on this other project. This project, the last project that I worked on, it was 2 years. I mean, it was a very long time. And I only work with one author at a time. Okay. Yeah, I feel privileged that I'm in the position that I'm able to do that. But there's no way. It's like when you're writing somebody's memoir, you are like embodying them. You have to understand their voice and their like everything about them. There's just no way I could do that for more than one person at a time. So, and with this last project, the scope just expanded and expanded. That's where the story led us. And so, it's, I work with people that if you have a tight deadline, like I have to get this out, it has to be out in a year. That's not it wouldn't be the right fit.
You're not the right fit because you're writing. Yeah. Do you believe, I mean, in this day and age, with all the resources and tools that we have, that folks that want to write should take some kind of writing classes or writing process or learn from other people before they try to start writing? Or should they, and then I'm bringing in the AI question here. I mean, should they have conversations with AI that tell them, act as if you're my literary agent and tell me back and forth? I mean, should they write prompts like that? I mean, how can I become a good writer in this day and age? Or is it, because it could be a long process or it could be an expensive process that, I think for some people might be too cumbersome to be able to, without other resources to be able to still get their stuff out unless they have those. So kind of walk through what you think a person should do if they want to write a book.
Sure. Okay. Oh, so you're saying actually write a book? Because at first I didn't know. You said they wanted to be a writer, but that's so.
Yeah, I mean, like writing a book, or I'm not thinking like people who want to do copyright, or think people who want to do articles or blogs, or I guess blogs would be something where you're trying to get out whatever your expertise is. But I'm thinking more specifically, the folks that have come to me are saying they would like to write a book, or they think that they have something. And maybe it needs to start with blogs, and maybe it needs to start with articles and that kind of stuff first. Not just to write for a living, but to write to get out what they have in their mind.
Yeah, well, there's many facets to, answer that question, because you are going to need to market and promote the book at some point. And so it's never too early to start with that. But then a lot of times it's always very good to have pieces published in different publications. If, for example, if you're interested in getting a book deal, a traditional book deal, that will help you very much, because publishers will see that you're a writer, that you can write, that you know how to write. So yeah, I think I would need a little more specific information depending on what kind of book it is, you know, but definitely there's so many courses and things, like educate yourself, you know, educate yourself on the publishing industry. Or if you want to go the other route, you know, you have to know how to not only market your book, you have to know how to the production. You know, it's like once the manuscript is done, then the fun just begins, which I really only just really learned about when I took the certification training. You know, I mean, now many people do it on their own, like the organization that we belong to together, CLA. Many authors are out there, you know, and they do that direct to consumer. They write their book, they produce their book, they market their book, they do it all on their own. So that's another whole avenue of what you have to learn how to do that. That's very different than if you want to try and get a book deal, or they have a good hybrid publishers now, but you have to be so careful because, well, that's another whole discussion about the morphing of the publishing industry these days.
Yeah, there's so many avenues where you can get what you're writing out there. And,
right.
You know, I just think of, you know, after I got my book, you know, my first book done, and, you know, and my sister happens to be a traditional author that writes vampire books. I don't know where she got I grew up in the same house as she does, so I don't know where, you know, we didn't talk about vampires as kids, but now, and she has a series, and she's a $1 million author who's made tons of money. And that's all. I mean, she just writes a book a year, a book every 2 years, and she has a huge following and that kind of stuff. And so when I started to get into it, because I'm on the personal development side and the self-help type book, and I was, and so even what you're telling me, the questions that I was asking her, she couldn't answer for me. She was saying, I'm in the fiction world. And the fiction,
it's completely different.
It has nothing to do with anything you're going to write. She said, I couldn't even begin to know how to get you done in that world, because she's in this world that all these things have to happen, and all the things that she has to do to promote the book before it comes out, and the characters that she's developed, and do they go from one place to another? And she's like, you're not going to write a book that's going to be a series that's 9 books long that are all about how these characters are developed, and all that portion of the writing. And so
very different.
Yeah, it's very different. And I can imagine the memoir space as it's the same, where it's, hey, I'm writing because I'm really getting in touch with the person who is, and that's a 2-year project or a 3-year, however long it is, where, I'm saying, okay, I want to teach you not how to procrastinate, and that's something you're going to use right away. And it's going to be a shorter book and a smaller book. And so, but what I guess what's happened in the industry that is just so crazy to me is all the people that continue to call me almost every day and have the best marketing strategy. And so, oh gosh,
unbelievable.
Yeah, I think there's and maybe I have an author that I work with that I coach with, and she just got pitched to in New York in Times Square, and I've spent very very little time in New York to know how that works. But I guess they said, we're going to get your book where you gets to be seen every 22 minutes for 24 hours. And, as people are walking by, we're going to scroll it through, and, you're going to pay us $2,000 so that for a 24-hour period, it gets all these times. And, I think to myself, are the people who walk into New York like going, oh, I see that book, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to go buy it at the bookstore, or is that just a a marketing ploy that these guys are just trying to get out there to help people. Do you have any, I guess, advice on how to avoid some of that? Or is it just, hey, you just got to hope that, is it like somebody you can use in the national, they don't do this ad, 1-800 number you could call so they know that you're getting scammed or something, or that it's not going to work?
I get that stuff still all the time. I get calls, phone calls, emails. It's nuts. It's crazy. It's crazy. You just have to really be very, very, very cautious. People like now with what's happening in the industry, people really they want to like prey on first-time authors. They prey on their vulnerability. It's like anything, but you have to just really, really be very careful. Even publishers, like it's interesting with memoir because the publishing world, in a certain way, they've always really loved to hate memoir for different reasons. Yeah. And now, I mean, memoir is hot, really hot. But if you're not a celebrity, a politician, or like a major influencer, with massive
following
social media, you're not going to get anything. And so, but there are other options out there. There are some very, very reputable hybrid publishers that aren't going to take advantage of you. But, some of them, like the ones that are really reputable, they're the ones that actually handle distribution for you. Like a lot of these hybrids now, because hybrids are all over the place. And so I'm just zooming in on this now, but a lot of them will say, oh, we do distribution, but they're lying. They're just like, they're misinforming people. What they do is they make the book available. You know what I mean? So like it's in Ingram Spark or something like that. It is available. That's very different than distribution. Distribution means you have a sales force going out selling that book, So no matter where you're entering in, you have to be so careful. It's like life, right? People want to take advantage of other people, so got to be careful.
Oh, absolutely. What haven't we talked about that you want to make sure? I want you to make sure you tell people how to get a hold of you and if they're interested in using your services. But what didn't we talk about today? It's been such a great conversation that you would love to have a conversation or tell us or the listeners about today.
Sure. Well, this would be if you're thinking about writing your memoir or hiring a ghostwriter, or even if you're not, that it's just getting back to the spirituality piece and the spiritual piece, which is just, it's the core of who I am. That when we really work inside to work through and let go of all the pain and trauma that we're carrying around in us, we're going to know who we are much more. We're going to know our gifts. We'll be able to be of service to the world. And so if you're not writing the memoir, it's just living life. But if you are, there's definitely that process of, it's very cathartic. You go through, you see what you're holding on to, and it kind of is like therapy. Like this last client that I work with, without going into any details, she had some trauma. It was really, anyway, and well, I'll just say really briefly, she didn't tell me this at the beginning when we first started working. We had worked out what the story was going to be. And then about 3 weeks in, she mentioned to me that she was sexually abused by her grandfather, between 4 and 5 years old. And her mother was sexually abused by the same man, her father, for her whole, until she was a teenager. And it was like a shock, I mean, the scope of the story just changed. And so we started working, and so that became, the major narrative arc, and everything else had to weave in through that. I mean, it worked beautifully. But what I want to say is that she started telling me these things. I work over Zoom because she's in Florida. I'm in Boston. And I'm listening to what she's saying to me. And I'm like dying inside. I just can't believe what she went through as this little girl. But I had my agenda, I had to get my work done, and I just didn't say anything. And finally, like several months later, I just couldn't take it anymore. I just looked at her and I'm like, Cheryl, I am so, so sorry for what you've been through. I am so sorry. And I am sobbing. I just was holding it in. I think I was waiting for the right moment, and she kind of wiped away a little tear. She had kind of a stoic stance working through that, because of her experiences. It's part of the narrative arc. And she just wiped away a little tear. And she just looked at me and she said, "You're healing me. You're healing me. You're healing me."
Oh, that's so cool.
All I ever wanted was to be seen. And, it's not that her husband wasn't there for her whole life. He was just an amazing man. It was a beautiful love story, among other things, this book. But this goes back to what I was saying before. Mm-hmm. There's something very, very different of sharing your trauma and deepest truth with another woman when you're ready to claim it.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, so cool. How would somebody call you? How would they get a hold of you? What would they? Do you have a website, or do you have?
Yes, I do. I have a website. I'm actually working on it right now.
Okay.
Updating a little bit, but it's Golden Ghost. The main ideas are there. It's goldenghostwriting.com. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, it's Gail at goldenghostwriting.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. That's my only professional platform at this time.
Okay. So that's your social media. That's where you're at. And
yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So if you were to, I guess, give advice to somebody who's, like what, the last piece of advice that you would say for somebody who's saying, I really want to share my story. I don't know how to get started. Is it just call you and have a conversation? Is it talk to other people to see if it's there? What does somebody do if they want to be that healing? The thing you just talked about just seems so amazing that you were able to help her. And it sounds, as we've been talking about the therapeutic part of it, but there's so many folks. I have a client right now that she's wanting to work with women who have lost babies because she's lost a couple of babies and she's in that space and she's wanting to have folks listen to her, and she wants to write about it and she wants to really help people.
I'll add to I belong in there too.
Oh, do you? Okay. Gotcha. And so how does she get started? What does she do to be able to get going here?
Well, I'll tell you, if you want to work with a ghostwriter, reach out to me, or, there are a lot of ghostwriters out there as well. But if you want to write your memoir on your own, there are so many avenues. Like I belong to different memoir communities, not so much for the writing, but I want to be in the conversation about memoir, Okay. So there's a organization that I belong to called Memoir Nation. And there's a woman, who actually my last client is publishing with a beautiful hybrid publisher called She Writes Press. They're amazing. And Brooke Warner is the publisher, and she works with a lot of memoirists, and they have like 6-month programs and 4-week programs. It's all about memoir. So if you're interested in memoir, just look up Memoir Nation and you get like into the groove there. And there's so many, like they're doing this thing now in Memoir Nation. They just like posted this thing where they're helping people to write their book proposals and submit to an agent and query. There's so much out there. There's also another colleague of mine, Amanda at Page and Podium Press. She actually, we met when we did the certification training together. She did my first editing of this last project I worked on. She has in her company the Memoir Method. And so look it up, Page and Podium Press. They take you through the whole process if you want to write it on your own. I think it's an 8-month process. There's so much out there if you're interested in doing it on your own.
Cool. Are there more women who write memoirs than men, or is it about the same, or am I just throwing out? It just seems like when I think of a memoir, I think of, women who have written about their lives and their stories. And I don't even know if the men call it the same thing or or because they're or is it a biography or what is it? Yeah, or autobiography or a biography, or is it different, or is it just the memoir? I mean,
Yeah, no, it's very different. And, a memoir, an autobiography is more of this happened, a chronological story.
Okay.
This happened and this happened and this happened. A memoir is very different. You're taking one aspect of your life and you're exploring that in the narrative arc. So one of the big things we have to figure out is what doesn't go in, because a lot of stuff comes out, but not everything fits. So to answer your question, though, I don't know for a fact. I would, if I had a guess, I would venture to say a lot more women would want to write their memoir than men, because I don't know, women seem, generally speaking, more open to self-exploration and vulnerability than men, but there are definitely men have written their memoirs. There's this great Moringer, who's like a very, very famous ghostwriter. He just wrote this last one for Prince Harry, and he did Andre Agassi, J.R. Moringer, and I wanted to read, and he wrote his own memoir, and I was really, really curious to see, because he's such an amazing writer, and it was incredible. I mean, his own book, I forgot what it was called right now, but it was, it's a great, the bar, the Tender Bar. Oh God, it was an awesome memoir.
Oh, good.
That he wrote.
Oh, cool. Well, Gail, thank you for being on today and sharing and being vulnerable and sharing. I mean, I kind of dug into your life story a little bit, and you were so willing to share it, and it's been such a blessing to have you on today. And I can't wait to see more. If this is your first podcast with us, then I would say get the notification button and hit subscribe, because I have so many interesting guests that share with us their lives, and we get to say, hey, I kind of can experience that, or I know what she means, and it's just so fun to be in that space. And so we'll continue to do is, I think we explored what it meant for her to live in boldly with purpose, and what the purpose for her life is. And now I would contact her and get with her on, if you want a memoir, or if you just want somebody to kind of talk to. I don't think she's going to spend a whole lot of time with you on her couch, but I'm sure she'd be happy to direct you in the direction that you want to go. And so, Gail, I'll give you a chance for just one last thought, and then we will say bye to the folks that have been part of this for today.
Okay. So I'm sorry, what was it that you wanted?
Just one last thought that you would love to give our audience today.
Yeah. Delve deep within and find out what your story is and what's holding you back, and how you can let it go and move forward, whether you want to write your memoir or not.
I love it. Thank you. You guys have an amazing, awesome day. I believe that you're God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. But you were born for greatness, and that greatness needs to come out in some way, whether it's through book or through writing or through voice. Just let your greatness come out, because you are an answer to somebody else's prayer. Somebody is praying today that the things that you have in your life would come out so that they could have a better life. So take advantage of that, and we'll look forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Have an amazing, awesome, awestruck, incredible day today.